Hello and welcome to 25 Days of Christmas Comics. I am your host, the Dude Without Fear, and this is day 19 of our 25-day series. And I'm very excited for the books that are coming up over these last few days because I saved a lot of my personal favorites and a lot of the best books for last. And tonight, I feel, is no exception. Uh, when I read this book, I was just, the story's just, it's so good. And it's written by Chuck Dixon, and it's in the heyday of Nightwing. You know, Chuck Dixon wrote like the first 100 issues or something like that of Nightwing. And after he left that book, the character, honestly, to me, has just never been the same. And while there were some good runs after that, once the character got rebooted with the New 52 and now DC Rebirth, the character just doesn't quite feel right. It doesn't feel like Nightwing to me. And so revisiting this old school Nightwing book, man, I really miss this era of comic books. Luckily, they're available in back issues for us to continue to enjoy. But let's get into this story. Our story tonight takes place in Nightwing number 64, and it is a story called On a Christmas Evening. A very skinny dude in a very loose Santa suit is running on a snow-covered Bloodhaven street, and he is out of breath, and he's booking it, man. And above him is Nightwing, who is about to drop down on him. And he does. He hits him in the back, knocks him on his face, and he goes sliding through the snow. He thinks to himself, most crooks take the holiday off, except the bottom feeders. Everyone else sees tinsel and garland. These lowlifes see cold green cash from selling rock. And so Nightwing goes and gets on top of this dude, gets in his face, and he's holding up a stack of bills. And Nightwing says, collecting cash for the orphans, right? And he's like, uh-huh. But you're the only orphan who'll see this money. And the guy says, yup. And Nightwing says, so you don't mind if I drop today's proceeds into St. Sebastian's poor box? Uh-huh. And so Nightwing lets him go, and he runs off, and Nightwing says, get your sorry behind out of Bloodhaven, and Merry Christmas. And Nightwing takes back to the rooftops with the sack of cash, and he thinks, bad money after good. I'll take a run by the church, then continue my war on crime and my day job. And one of the things that I love so much about this era of Nightwing is that he's a crime fighter 24/7. He's Nightwing at night, and by day, he's a police officer for the Bloodhaven PD. So he literally never stops at this point. He's always doing anything that he can to help make Bloodhaven a better place. And that's awesome. Nightwing is a very underrated character in my opinion. There's a lot of respect for Nightwing, but like that's what I mean by it's not the same character to me now, because how Nightwing is written nowadays, for the most part, is he's not as grown. Like, he feels like a much younger character, and he loses a lot of the man he grew into, and it's honestly a shame. But anyway, back to our story. Uh, so Dick Grayson goes into work the next day, and there are all of these letters all over his desk. And if this seems very familiar to you, uh, last night's episode was from Superman issue 64, so these books share an issue number, and Superman was dealing with letters to him. So very similar in those two respects. So he's asking his partner what's if he got fan mail, and she's like, not unless your name is Santa Claus. And he's like, hey, all of these are addressed to Santa Claus. What's up with that? And she says, it's a Bloodhaven police tradition. Every year the post office drops off a few sacks from the more desperate neighborhoods' mailboxes. We read them and try to answer them, or drop off a toy or whatever. Dick says, I thought mailmen did that kind of thing. And his partner says, they won't even deliver mail to the Z-Moors. On those blocks, Santa has to carry a gun. And Nightwing's inner monologue says, the more I find out, the more confused I am. Nothing in the Haven is what it seems. Cops on the take and on the make, Haven cops as cynical as they come. But they're studying those crayon scrawled letters like they were prime evidence. Look at Hannity. I've seen him beat a suspect raw, and he's fighting back tears at a dear Santa. And Mendelsohn, he always cracks the sickest jokes at homicide scenes. He's sniffling like he's found out his team didn't make the spread. Christmas melts the hardest hearts, I guess. I thought the cops were thinking of their Christmas bonuses and station house parties. Maybe I can make a few wishes come true. Haven't shopped for toys in years. So Dick opens up a letter. And it's literally the first letter he opens. And it says, Dear Santa Claus, please don't bring me toys. Just bring my daddy a job. He wants a job but can't find one, and that is why he is going to do some bad stuff to make money. I am very scared. I don't want my daddy to be bad or get hurt or get taken away. Can you give my daddy a job? Your friend, Shara. And Dick has a tear in his eye, and he thinks to himself, there's one to the heart. So his partner shows up again, and she's like, you ready to roll? And he says, yeah, okay. And she's like, wow, that letter really got to you, huh? And she's like, Officer Grayson is a big softy. You want a tissue? He says, that's all right. She asks, you want to cry on my shoulder? He says, Amy. And so they're in their squad car, and Dick immediately kind of goes into detective mode. And he's looking over the envelope. He says, this isn't what I expected. I expected an I want this, I want that letter. No return address, just a postmark for Bower Haven. And throughout his shift, him and Amy are super busy breaking up crime all throughout the city. Every type of thing you can imagine, shoplifting, theft and vandalism, joyrides, all this stuff. And so after his shift, he changes into his Nightwing costume immediately and takes to the streets, or the rooftops, I guess, or both. And he's after information on who wrote this letter. He wants to find this kid. So he's out looking around for people to hit up for information, and he sees all these kids out playing hockey in the street. And he thinks to himself, most places kids are in bed at this hour. In the Bower, kids are on the street 24/7. And so he drops down onto the hood of a car and gets the kids' attention, and he asks them if they have heard, if they know a Shara. And they're like, I've heard of Sarah, Shira, all these other girls, but I've never heard of a Shara. So the kid's not really proven to be fruitful for him. So Dick goes back to his apartment, grabs a bite to eat, and has a video chat with Tim Drake, which is Robin. And he says, I figure you could check the school rolls, public assistants. How many Sharas could there be? And Tim says, if that's her name. And he says, this may be none of my business. Don't you usually go to Barbara for this stuff? And he says, things have been strained. And Tim says, you can't keep beating yourself up like this, man. And Dick says, I killed the Joker, Tim. I can't stop thinking about it. And for those of you that would like to know where that happened, it is a 6-issue miniseries called Joker Last Laugh. You can feel free to check that out. He says, I thought I was more in control than that, but I lost it. And Tim says, it was made right, Dick. The Joker is alive and not well in a maximum security cell. And Dick says, it's not right with me. I never thought I could be a killer. I'm wrong. There's a part of me I never saw before. The rage. I never felt anger like that. I feel like it clawed me up inside. Tim said, it's a mistake to pull away like this. You should be with your family this time of year. Then we cut to a apartment. And there's a little girl holding a doll, peeking through a door and listening to the conversation that's going on between her father and some very bad men in the living room. And they ask, what's to think about, my man? He says, I don't know. I have my little girl to think about. That's what I'm saying. You carry some rock into the Z Moors. You look straight. Project cops won't look at you just like last time. Then you and your little girl have a Merry Christmas. They hand him a bag full of drugs. It says, drop it tonight. Building D, guy named Braces. And he says, I get $5,000 for that. I say, word. It says, tonight, my man, peace. And they leave. And so he's sitting on the couch. And, he's got his head in his hand. And he's just wrecking himself over whether or not he needs to do this. And what he's got himself into. And the little girl says, Daddy? He says, there's my sunshine. Who are those men? Just some guys I know. What's in the bag? They gave you that bag. It's work, baby. Like a job? Something like that. And then he picks her up and hugs her and he says, then we can move out of here. Buy a real Christmas tree and toys and all that good stuff. And she asks, like when Mommy was alive? He says, I'm going to try, baby. I'm going to try. He goes and puts the bag up in a top cabinet in the kitchen. He says, I'm going to have to go out later. You'll be okay till I get back? She says, yeah. You won't get hurt. And she asks him, you won't get hurt? You won't die? And he pats her on the head and he says, not as long as I got you, sunshine. Daddy's going to get dressed now. You watch some TV. And she just stands there eyeballing that bag in the cabinet. Then we go back to the next morning. Dick Grayson on the phone with Tim Drake, and he's getting a status update on this computer search for Shara. And Tim's come up empty-handed. And he asks Dick, you think she spelled her name wrong? And Dick says, I doubt it. The spelling was pretty good on the letter. And he says, dead end. Nothing in city records, nothing in county. And Dick asks, an alias? And Tim says, a kid with an alias? He goes, like an imaginary friend. And Tim asks, so what good was the request in the letter if she or he used a phony name? And Dick says, Santa knows her real name, Tim. Tim says, didn't think of that. Thanks for the trouble, gotta go. So Dick and his partner get in the car, and he says, I'm thinking roast beef and coleslaw at Faldo's. And she goes, okay, but can we stop at Toy Sack? Emma's got this toy she has to have. Dick says, a little lady hard case set so she can be like Mom. And she goes, funny, but it's a Shara Starlight doll. And that gets Dick's attention. So then we go back to the little girl and her father. And he's putting on a jacket. And he says, going out, sunshine. You keep the door locked and don't... Huh? And he notices that the bag is on the floor and not in the cabinet that he left it in. And he's like, oh man. And he goes into the bathroom and she's pouring all these drugs down the toilet. And he's like, what are you doing? And she says, I don't want you doing bad things for those bad men. I don't want you to get hurt. If you go out, you might never come back. And they hug each other. And he says, oh, baby, what am I going to do now? So Dick and Amy are now at the toy store. And he's getting a little educated about this Shara Starlight doll. And he's like, I've never heard of this character. I was never really much into toys, though. My childhood was kind of short. And she's like, where have you been? This doll has a TV show, a clothing line, and a float in the Gotham Founders Day Parade. And he takes one off the shelf and looks at the $25 price tag on it. And he's like, here's the imaginary friend. But she comes at a steep price, not the kind of money someone in Bower Haven throws around. And he says to Amy, I bet you could get these cheaper if you bought it hot. She's like, excuse me? We enforce the law, remember? He says, just a hypothetical, Amy. If I wanted to buy a toy that fell off the truck. And then, later that night, Nightwing is interrogating a guy selling a bunch of these stolen Shara Starlight dolls. And he says, I don't have a lot of time. How long have you worked this corner? It's like 2 weeks, man. Sell a lot of these dolls. He says, I don't sell many white dolls on this block, man. He goes, so who did buy one? Then back at the apartment, the guy's expecting this little girl's dad to make this drop are gathered around and they're mad. He says, tell me I'm not hearing this. You did what with my product? And the little girl's scared and holding on to her dad while all these jerk holes are surrounding them. He says, she doesn't know. She doesn't understand. And the main guy's like, she flushed my goods. Who's going to pay for that, man? And then somebody says, put it on my bill. And they all turn around. And they're like, who are you? And Nightwing goes, Santa Claus. And then he proceeds to beat the crap out of these douchebags. And so once they're all knocked out, he apologizes that he's wrecked this dude's apartment. And the guy's like, it's alright. And the little girl comes up to him. And he picks up her Shara doll off the floor. And she goes, are you really Santa? And he goes, just an elf. He goes, Santa got your letter. I mean, Shara's letter. He hands her the doll. And can Santa give me what I want for Christmas? And Nightwing says, sure. He's about to leave, and he turns back to the dad and says, your little girl asked for a job for you for Christmas. He says, it's going to take more than wishes. Nightwing says, have you tried the Spillane Avenue agency? Like a dozen times. I got a felony record. Nightwing says, try him again in the morning. I have a feeling something will come up. So what I assume is the next morning, we're at Dick Grayson's apartment as he's fixing to leave for his shift at work. And some of the other tenants are asking if he's got a chance to meet the new super. And he's like, no, I haven't. They're like, if you got a minute, we'll introduce you real quick. He's like, just a minute, but yeah, let's do it. And so they take him and they introduce him to Dave Toussaint, the new superintendent, which is the little girl's father. Dick says, good to see you, Dave. I think you're going to like it here. He says, so do I, Dick. So do I. And the little girl is holding her Shara doll and building a snowman in the snow. So that story just really gets you in the feels when that little girl is pouring those drugs down the toilet because she doesn't want her dad to get hurt or killed because she loves him and she wants him around. And, you know, he's doing this for her because he can't find a job elsewhere. He's tried, and he's doing this to take care of his little girl. But all she knows is those people are bad, and if he does this for them, then that's just more that they're going to be around. And she knows it's dangerous, and she would rather just have her dad, and she doesn't care about Christmas and a nice place to live as much as she cares about having her dad around. And she's very young, but I mean that's where her priorities are, with her dad. Whatever you decide to do with your life, it has an effect on other people. You're not just making the decisions that you make for yourself, because those decisions are going to trickle down and affect the other people that are in your life. And when those people are your family, then you need to be aware of where your decisions will take not just you, but your family. So we need to be mindful of the decisions that we make. And, you know, no matter how small the decision, it can still affect those around us. And a lot of times when we do things, we're only thinking about ourselves. and we don't take into consideration how it's going to affect those that we love. So be mindful of your decisions, and be aware that your decisions impact other people as well. And maybe if we were more aware of that more frequently, we would do things a little differently. And that concludes day 19 of 25 Days of Christmas Comics. I really hope that you'll join me back here tomorrow, because we've got some great stories ahead of us still. So if you liked this video, give me that thumbs up. That's all I ask of you for Christmas. And if you haven't subscribed already and you like this and you want to see more of this, hit that subscription button too. And I hope to see you back here shortly for day 20 of 25 Days of Christmas Comics. I have been your host, the Dude Without Fear. Please have a great night, and God bless.